What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video, I'm going to be showcasing what I think are the 10 best exotic special weapons in Destiny. This is purely from a PvE perspective, so I won't really be talking about how they function in PvP, and the list will reflect that because some of these weapons are mid at best in PvP, but they're absolute all-stars in PvE. And it doesn't matter if it's in the kinetic slot or the energy slot. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump right into it. At number 10, we have the pre-order exotic for the final shape in Tessellation. This is a very unique exotic that can match any subclass element, and I think when it finally gets a catalyst, the shots it fires will apply subclass verbs, such as when it's solar, it will apply Scorch. That is my guess, but it's just speculation, so that will make it even better. But as it stands now, it can consume your grenade charge and fire a high-powered shot that deals a lot of damage, and then when you get kills with it, it grants 20% grenade energy. Grenades are obviously super powerful in Destiny, and this is basically Demolitionist on steroids. So yeah, this is a pretty great weapon that has the potential to be even better in the final shape. Next up at number 9 is a weapon that was so good it had to be nerfed, but it is still pretty decent to this day, and that is Arbalest. This thing can one-shot barrier shields, which is extremely strong in things like GMs. It can also one-shot overshields like on the Ghost of the Deep bosses, so it's really nice there. It has been power crept out of relevance to a degree because what it does isn't needed as much anymore. It can pop any overshield in one shot, so in something like the Proving Ground Strike where you would get a random element on the Cabal mini-bosses, this was perfect, especially in solo content where it was hard to match every shield type. But they took match game out of the game with Lightfall, which drastically increased our loadout potential, but in the process it really hurt Arbalest because its niche was being able to deal with any shield type. But it is still quite good. The Catalyst gives you Genesis, so every time you break a shield it reloads the magazine. And this includes barrier champion shields, and it has anti-barrier built into it, so it is awesome for those. On top of this, it has Disruption Break, which ramps up its damage by 50% every time it breaks a shield. These are perfect pairings for this weapon. They nerfed its damage against champions quite a while ago, but it still does a decent job on them. So yeah, this thing doesn't see as much play just because of the sandbox we're currently in, but it is still the GOAT at what it does, which is taking out overshields with ease. Next is one of my favorite weapons in the game, the Fourth Horseman. This thing pumps out a ton of damage in a very short amount of time, and the Catalyst gives it an extra shot in the mag. The damage it deals ramps up as you hold the trigger. It is a burst DPS all-star. I loved it in Nightmare Hunts back in the day for quickly taking out the nightmares. It worked perfectly for that. And speedrunners also use it with Rain of Fire on Warlock to automatically reload it so they can pump out even more damage. Because that is its downfall. You pump out your shots, but then you need to reload it, which takes time. And also, it only holds like 17 shots at base, so it doesn't really have high total damage either. But when you need an enemy killed immediately, this is a go-to. It's extremely good at what it does. At 7, we have Cloud Strike. Probably the best PvP weapon on the list. So good in fact that they actually had to nerf the radius in which a lightning strike deals damage. So if you get a crit kill with this thing, it will cause a lightning strike that deals AoE damage. And if you land 3 consecutive crits, it makes a lightning storm. This is good as additional DPS, but it's also nice for ad clear. I absolutely loved using this weapon in the Lightblade Strike when Arc Singe was on. It's very good. Plus, rapid fire snipers got a buff to reserves, and snipers in general just got a buff to their damage in PvE recently by 15%. So Cloud Strike is eating really good these days. You just don't see it as much this season because the artifact has nothing to do with Arc, and there's no anti-champion capabilities for sniper rifles. So even though it terrorizes PvP, don't sleep on it in PvE. It's still really good. At number 6 is a weapon that's not great on its own, but is awesome in team play in specific scenarios. I am talking about Divinity. Divinity makes a bubble for people to hit crits on bosses and also weakens bosses by 15%. It used to be 30%, which was OP as hell, but even at 15%, it is still a staple in every raid group. Crota's End was a tough day 1 raid, but probably every group that beat it had one guy on Divinity for the Ear Ute encounter. On bosses with tough to hit crits, it is pretty much a must. It is great for Rulk too. This weapon also has intrinsic overload built in, and it's really nice because it stuns them immediately on hit, which can be really good on overload captains who like to teleport around. So you'll never see someone solo a GM with Divinity, it's not really that type of weapon, but it is awesome in team play, especially raids, so I think 6 is a good ranking for it. From one raid exotic to another, at number 5, we have Conditional Finality from Root of Nightmares. Much like Cloud Strike, this is a menace in PvP, but it also really shines in PvE. It only holds 2 rounds in the mag, and they shoot fire and ice. The first shot is Stasis, which will freeze a target, and the second shot is Solar, which will ignite a target. This means it can stun unstoppable champs with either of its rounds. It has Alloy Magazine for fast reloads when the mag is empty. This gives it a decent amount of DPS, as you can empty 2 shots and then reload. And you are getting bonus damage from the Shatter and the Ignition. And then there's just the fun factor. This is truly one of the most satisfying weapons to use in the entire game. I love it. At number 4, we have a D2 OG in Merciless. I remember using this on the Baths encounter to melt the bathers on the plate. It is a fusion rifle that ramps up damage the longer you are on a target. It also has the perk Impetus, which is like kill clip on steroids. It grants 50% bonus damage for 4.5 seconds, and that is when this thing really shines. You've probably seen a ton of people use this to solo Root of Nightmares bosses. That is because it is great for supplemental damage. It hits like a heavy weapon when it's ramped up, but you have to ramp it up for it to be effective. But when you do, this thing totally shreds and is a great DPS option to pair with something like a legendary solar rocket launcher. So at number 3, we have one of my favorite weapons in the game. Actually, all 3 of these next ones are some of my favorites. But at 3, we have Egger's Scepter. This is a stasis trace rifle that shreds red bars, and when you get a kill, it refills 10 ammo and freezes nearby enemies. So it sort of has subsistence, which is one of my favorite perks because I hate reloading. So it allows you to just keep killing ads and not having to reload. It's an ad clear monster. But then, if you come up to a high health target, you can use its will given form to deal a ton of damage. This can only be done with a full super, and it drains your super while you do it, but you get double the magazine capacity when you switch to this mode, and your shots will apply slow. This makes it viable against overload champions. It deals 80% more damage when it's in this form as well, and it's very powerful. So in the exotic primary video, I did an honorable mention part, so I do want to do that here. I was actually shocked when I made this list. There are some decent special weapons in Destiny 2 to be sure, but there aren't as many as you think, especially for exotics. Borealis is okay in niche scenarios, but much like Arbalest, its niche has been kind of power crept away, and Jotun can also be alright. Same with Bastion, but none of these weapons jump out to me as must-use weapons. You don't see them all that much, but the exotic sidearms are pretty good. Forerunner is good with anti-barrier sidearm and has great ammo reserves for a special weapon. It also deals really good crit damage, so if you can hit your shots, it is a beast. It's a favorite of people for soloing the Tormentor boss for the Wicked Implement thanks to its high crit damage and deep reserves, so it gets a shout out here. The other is Buried Bloodline. I haven't played with it enough, so it may deserve a spot on this list and I'm just unaware of its power, but I wanted to mention it because it is very good on paper. It can grant the wielder Devour for getting kills with the weapon, and Devour is already extremely strong, and this lets you use it on any subclass. And then if you have the Catalyst, when you get Devour, it can also apply Weaken to enemies. And Weaken is also extremely strong, and to be able to proc it on any subclass is a great benefit. So I definitely wanted to give it a shout out. It easily could be way stronger than I give it credit for. I just probably haven't used it in enough scenarios to see its true potential. But like I said, it's really good on paper. And the other one I want to mention is Dead Messenger. Waveframe GLs are pretty nice in PvE, and Dead Messenger splits off into 3 waves, making it great for taking out large groups of ads, so it's very solid. Now we have the final 2, and coming in at number 2 is Izanagi's Burden. This thing absolutely slaps. I've loved it since the day it came into the game. The high damage single shot from Honed Edge ×4 is always so satisfying to use. It can delete champions in one shot in most content, and it is a very useful part of high-end DPS swap rotations. Shoot Izanagis, unload rockets, let them auto-reload, shoot Izanagis again, rinse and repeat. There's not much more to it. Being able to dispatch an enemy from basically any distance with one shot is an extremely valuable thing in PvE. It has the burst damage similar to Fourth Horseman, with the benefit of not having to get up close, but you do have to hit the crit. There really isn't much more to say. Big burst damage equals strong. It is a beast, and well deserving of the number 2 spot. It could even be the best, but the next one I am very partial to, and that, at number 1, is Witherhoard. From the day it came out, it has been a monster, and I talked in my exotic primary video about how great damage over time is. It's a very strong effect in Destiny 2, and Witherhoard does it better than most. You can lay down a blight to spawn trap enemies. I talked about how great spawn trapping is in my How to Not Die in Destiny video. It is extremely good to be able to spawn kill enemies, and the weapon does it well. It's also nice because you can stick an enemy with Witherhoard and then hide behind cover. This also makes it very safe to use. It has auto-loading holster, which is one of my favorite perks in the game because I hate reloading. So you simply shoot a shot, then start dealing damage with your other weapons. All the while, it's ticking away and hurting the boss or whatever enemy you chose to stick it with. It doesn't have to be a boss. You can shoot it on the ground to take out a bunch of adds and then deal with even more adds with your other weapons. It's just so good and so versatile. It got a nerf to its damage over time quite a while ago, and yet is still a top tier pick for a special weapon. And it too can be part of a DPS swap rotation, though you can really only have one player on your team using it because damage over time effects only work for one player. So with all that versatility, I think it's deserving of the best special weapon in Destiny. So for a quick recap, we had Tessellation at number 10, Arbalest at number 9, Fourth Horseman at number 8, Cloudstrike at number 7, Divinity at number 6, Conditional Finality at number 5, Merciless at number 4, Edgar's Scepter at number 3, Izanagi's Burden at number 2, and Witherhoard at number 1. Let me know down below what you think of the list. I think I did a decent job of capturing why these exotics are so good in Destiny 2, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're still watching, then thanks so much for watching to the end. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe so you don't miss my next video where I rank the 10 best exotic heavies in Destiny 2. Once again, thanks for watching and take care.